and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 20 of Spy Family. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So it seems like we're just getting a little bit of a recap for those of us who have been sitting in the cheap seats, Operation Strix, Phase 1's over, Phase 1-2's beginning, social engineering and infiltration and all that stuff. I can't help but wonder why they're choosing to do this little recap right now. Alright, so this is the episode where it's sort of like take your kid to work day. I was gonna say, this isn't exactly conducive to the main plot. So I do find it interesting that the assignment isn't even necessarily, follow your parents around, because I would assume that's like the natural thing to do with kids this age. Figure out what your parents do for a living and write about it. I mean, it seems like even though parents were merely an option, that's sort of what everyone is opting to do. Oh dear. Anya's already stone-faced thinking about what could possibly happen if she follows Yor to work. I like that how in her misguided imaginings of how this will end up going that, Anya sort of dresses like her, as if that's the dress code to being a contract killer. I mean, bless her sweetheart, she's sort of trying to give an actual explanation of the ins and outs of the job. Man, you're bringing your adoptive daughter around to witness an assassination, but this guy clearly deserves it, but you can't describe his crimes because that would not be child-friendly, as it were. I seem to recall this wasn't a particularly long gag in the manga, but it's nice that they sort of extended it. I do like these sort of, I guess, imagination sequences where all the colors are very muted or washed out. Yeah, it is nice to see Yor in action, considering we haven't seen too much of that, and frankly, I don't think we're going to see very much more of it in the next couple episodes. Wasn't yours sort of talking at one point about how, she got blood on her dress and that was bad? Maybe she should be a little bit more careful before spraying down herself and everyone else. Haha, yes. Working at City Hall, because that is my job, would be really boring. You don't want to see that. So naturally, things are going to get interesting. Anya has decided to dress up like, I guess you'd call it a stereotypical detective, Sherlock Holmes, even though she's not really doing any detective work, she's just here to learn and take notes. Naturally, she's taking notes about things she shouldn't be. Surely this won't, bite anyone in the rear. This can only end well. So this is interesting, and I think we're going to get a rare opportunity to see Lloyd actually at work. At least according to his cover. Ooh, that was a mean thing. You're so slow you can't catch a cold. Oh. Oh dear. So, this does seem to sort of play into Lloyd's kind of wider perspective in that, he seems to have a special soft spot for veterans suffering after the war for mental illness. And, that checks out considering we've already sort of been led to believe that getting caught up in the previous war sort of shaped his views and personality to a degree. It's a little thing, but I do appreciate how the subtitles attempt to sort of, I guess, display Anya's lack of proficiency with language. Given that she doesn't always pronounce words entirely correctly, it sort of translates the mispronunciation. I mean, from what little I know, children often have trouble pronouncing L sounds just because there's, some intricate tongue movement involved that requires a level of fine motor control that kids don't always have. So, please becomes please and things like that. Now, I'd imagine that given Lloyd's job as a psychiatrist is a cover, I'd have to imagine this hospital has been pretty thoroughly infiltrated by Wise, just so there's a whole group of people who can cover for him when things get tricky. Otherwise, I'd imagine his job would not be tenable. Oh, man. Anya might as well have just, turned to the camera and winked. Why do you look so smug? Seems like, if nothing else, Anya's having a very nice day. Everybody's being real kind to her, and she has managed to not cause any trouble yet, which is kind of rare. Although I suspect the adults kind of want to get out of work, too, They can entertain a well-behaved little kid. That's certainly better than doing your job. Now, it is interesting that Lloyd, he's sort of waxing about doctor-patient confidentiality, and therefore he can't, have Anya watch a session. Well, that is true and ethical, but, is he actually going to be working with the patient here, or is he just sort of like getting her to stay somewhere while he does spy stuff? Uh-oh. Yeah, I think I know where this is going. Anya has said that she's basically done with her assignment, and she's kind of bored now. And she's inadvertently discovered a secret passage. So naturally, she's gonna do something. I can only imagine she's gonna fall through, a drop ceiling or something into some operating room or something, who knows. Yeah, foreshadowing here is sometimes relatively light-handed, but I think, that business with the secret passage and Lloyd trying to say, hey, look at this psychological test. Yeah, something's gonna happen. So here we have this agent here, and oh dear, I can't remember her name. Or her code name, rather, but she is a character I kind of like. Especially because she's basically, she's basically there to be a punching bag. Nightfall. That's her code name. I believe her code name is Nightfall, because, Nightfall, Twilight. There's a bit of a theme here emerging. But we don't know much about Nightfall at this point, but we will swiftly learn, I do believe, and it really only serves to add another wrinkle to this situation, kind of like a farce where all these different characters have competing interests and immediately resort to lying and misunderstanding things people tell them. So naturally, Anya has sort of intruded into this conversation regarding hallucination. And it's was there a sound emanating from the ceiling? It's nah, dude, you're just imagining things. Oh dear. Now, not to pull out the tweezers and start nitpicking, but I have to wonder how precisely she got her foot stuck under there, considering she would have had to have crawled over the pipe to begin with. I mean, either way, these supposedly rational adults here are rather disconcerted by the noise coming from the ceiling. I mean, I can't say how I'd react to the situation for sure, but I'd assume, I don't know, something was knocking around in the HVAC system and needed to be replaced. Because, that's what it is. That's the ventilation duct. Oh man, looks like the air handling unit's going bad or something. We need a new one. I wouldn't assume it was a ghost. So it seems like Lloyd wasn't fooling around. It turns out this psychological test is something he's taking seriously. And Anya didn't really, do much of anything. Seems like he's taking a Freudian approach here where how people play with the toys is sort of indicative of their inner psyche and their subconscious, and given that Anya just sort of haphazardly dumped everything in, that to Lloyd is indicative of deep distress and anguish. Oh dear. So this is the classic farce setup, somebody, in order to cover up a lie, does something, and now a third party is completely misinterpreting things. His mind is filling in the gaps here. Naturally, if this is a kid who's been adopted 4 times and returned 4 times, and then been involved in a kidnapping and a bomb plot, you know, even if the screws aren't loose per se, they're definitely not up to the standard torque, if you catch my meaning. Like, I feel like kids are resilient to a degree in that they can just sort of ignore what they don't really understand, but I don't know, Anya's displayed some understanding, so you'd think she'd be a little bit more affected than she is. Uh-oh. Oh, what are you doing? I mean, that's a nice callback to the scene that ultimately concluded with the hand grenade proposal, but like, oh man, that was an obvious lie at the time that Yor immediately fell for. So naturally, this is going to be an unmitigated disaster, because on the one hand, there are just words Anya can't pronounce properly, but I feel like Anya has also deeply misunderstood and has decided to editorialize. Because on the one hand, she's talking about the good that he does, treating war veterans, but on the other hand, she refers to his patients as targets, and talks about how he likes to make connections with informants and all that. Naturally, these other kids who are far more savvy than Anya, they assume that giving people snacks is sort of a euphemism for bribery. I mean, I feel bad for Henderson. Like, he looks actually mortified. I feel like a man of his stature should sort of conclude that maybe this is the editorializing of a child who doesn't truly understand, but I don't know. So, as is usually the case, Anya's watching Bondman do something, and now she wants to do it too. And in this case, it would seem to be creating ciphers and codes and all that cool stuff. So it seems like that old issue of fine motor control rears its ugly head again. Children aren't exactly known to have good handwriting, so nobody's going to be able to decipher a secret code that is also illegible. Well, that's an interesting little bit of foreshadowing there with Yor just having got the laundry. So I think it's interesting that Anya's sort of smart enough to get someone to do something for her that she can't do on her own. I mean, I guess it's natural for children to do that with their parents, but it strikes me as interesting. So as much as I appreciate Anya's casual disrespect for postal workers, this isn't exactly going to get her top secret message to wherever she wants it to go. And at this point, I'm not exactly sure what her goal is here. She just seems to be giving it to whoever's available. The mailman, those gossiping women. Oh, and here we have Frankie. And it's nice to see him again. I like Frankie. I'd have to say he's probably, my favorite character, but at the same time, I think he's really only good as a minor character, He can't exactly carry the show by himself. So Anya has seen fit to give Frankie a secret message too. I can only assume this will have greater ramifications as Frankie immediately misunderstands what precisely Anya meant by Oh, it's top secret. I can't tell you what it's all about. So she's really just giving the code to everyone. The idea being that I guess she seems to think they will take the time to decode it if they can't immediately glean the meaning from it. I mean, I guess anyone who's watched Bondman would be able to decipher the code. Or at least, maybe recognize it. Alright, so the idea here is that she's gonna see whoever solves the code show up to the bridge. And I guess they will bond over their love for Bondman. Uh-oh, Frankie. Oh dear, so Frankie, his chronic issue of not having a girlfriend rears its ugly head, It smells nice, it has nice handwriting, so naturally it's from a woman. And if it's from a woman, it must be a love letter. So Frankie, being the sharp-minded individual he is able to swiftly decode the letter and arrive at the appointed location at the appointed time. Oh no. Frankie is down bad. I feel like he needs a W in his life, man. See, this is the big issue. He's just filling in all sorts of details he knows nothing about and is, jumping decidedly to the wrong conclusion. And even Bond is conspiring to make things go astray. Frankie's just going to be standing there like a rube for who knows how long. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.